Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jill, of course, time management strategist, author, podcaster, speaker. You know me if you're here. If this is your first time, welcome. And I have a treat for you today. We are welcoming back Katja Lany, who is a Joie de Vivre healer, energy healer, and a liberator of integrity. Katja supports other people access, clear, and empower their subconscious for increased joy of life and empowered agency. She's the creator of the Inner Child Quiz, which you'll find linked in the show notes here. It's a magic mirror quiz that allows you to discern the healing that your unique inner child type requires. She's here today to talk to us about shifting from self-sabotage to self-esteem. We're talking about prioritizing self-care. I mean, there are so many good nuggets in this podcast. You're going to love her. She's also speaking at an online event coming up. So the link is in there as well. But before we dive in, if you are someone who is interested in self-care and you feel like there might be some energy burnout happening that is preventing you from truly being able to get your self-care, I want to refer you back to an episode that I did called the Exhausted Mom's Energy Fix. I say I did, but of course I had a guest come on and share her expertise in this area. Her name is Nikki Cheek. She's a wellness coach for busy moms and the founder of Intentional Wellness Coaching. That episode was jam-packed with ideas on how we can create sustainable strategies that fit seamlessly into our day and our schedule without tough routines to help you go from that I'm too tired to I've got this, which is the exact type of feeling that we want when we're talking about self-care and we're talking about taking care of ourselves. And so go check out that episode and get ready to get soft and deep and comfy with your inner child in this conversation here with Katja Lany. Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast, Katja. I'm so happy to have you with us again. This is such a treat, a returning guest. What's been going on since the last time you were here talking with us about the mother tree? How has things changed in your business? What's going on?
I am feeling so blessed these days because I have such a beautiful community to engage in, and it feels like I've really found my soul family. And I personally think there's nothing more awesome than that when you really have this sense of I'm engaging with people who speak my language and we really get one another. That is just so awesome, so meaningful.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree completely. And that's kind of how you and I got connected in the first time through a
Right.
community of like-minded people working on the same things with the same types of passions. So,
Hmm.
I find the exact same feeling about it is that it's so nourishing to have a
Yeah,
community,
yeah.
right? To be able to interact with, but also in a community to be able to share with and teach to and learn from. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it just feels so reassuring. Oh, I'm really seen here. I'm really heard here. I'm really loved here.
Well, your
That's
work does
what we
that.
want as human beings.
Yeah, that is what we want. You're absolutely right. And you do such a good job of bringing that to people through all of the things that you're doing. I just finished retaking the inner child quiz and felt very seen as the cheerleader type on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for creating it. It's very needed to be able to have these words and this, you know, summary of perhaps an introduction of why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. Sometimes when we dive into this inner child work, it can feel a little bit like very deep, dark waters if you're not sure where to start. So this is a wonderful way to get started. And then I also want to talk about the private podcast that you put out. Can you give us some details about that? It's very new and exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to start by sharing the name. I'm calling it From Inner Critic to Inner Calm, 3 tips for becoming your wise woman self. And inner critic is something that so many women are familiar with, and it just is so tragic when you lose yourself as your own best friend, and it feels like you're your own worst enemy. And if you have this self-sabotage that makes it so that you're not even the leader in your own life. If not you, then who?
Right.
That
Isn't
is
that the
just
truth?
the most tragic thing that I can think of. If you have a life, but you're not taking authorship of it.
I love how you described it as authorship. I was expecting you to say ownership because I've heard that a million times. And authorship is so empowering because it gives us
Yeah.
this feeling that we can create, that things are not set, that there is still a chance to write our story no matter what it's looked like so far. And we can use resources like this private podcast and working with you directly and doing the inner child work. We can use these tools to make that shift, right? From sabotage, self-sabotage to really creating that self-esteem. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that is my biggest responsibility, to create my life and to create my health. I'm responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody on the external is. And then that applies to in the context of this inner child work or reparenting work. I am responsible to reach out to those younger parts within that might feel stressed out, and I can tend to them with that motherly care, and I can go back and forth between both roles. I can offer comfort as that maternal energy, and then I can switch and receive the comfort as the little girl.
And this type of work, most people wouldn't consider as part of their self-care routine, but I fully think that it should be classified as self-care and included in our self-care routines. Would you
Yeah.
agree that this type of work like classifies as self-care? Because to me, there's nothing but it's literally taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. Sometimes self-care is really understood very superficially as going to the nail salon or getting your hair done, right? But you and I know that it's really this growing ourselves up and making sure we are reaching that spiritual maturity.
Hmm.
That's the biggest self-care that we can give ourselves. And it's such a win-win because it ripples, it really impacts the whole of humanity. Because when I am taking care to work with dysfunctional patterns in my being, I'm making sure that in my relationships, there is not this lose-lose dynamic anymore, but I open the door to creating that win-win dynamic. It makes such a difference whether I'm relating from a place of reactivity with somebody, or if I'm relating from this more mature, responsive, and responsible place.
Hmm. I'm I'm learning more and more about inner child work and like internal family systems and there's different names for this idea that we have all of our experience represented still in our body at any time, and it
Mhm.
may not be our present self who is reacting or feeling. It may be a past version of us, a younger version, for instance, that has is still sitting in some sort of neglect and is
Right.
reacting from that place. So I mean that's so much of the work that you do is helping us understand how to connect. Do you have any like top of mind things that you want to share about that journey with us?
Oh my gosh, this ancestral entanglement can create so much havoc. And it's the difference between being in a state of blind, immature love, or in a state of more mature love. And when there is ancestral entanglement present, then I am motivated so much by deep love, by deep loyalty to the family system. But still, even if it's motivated by love, such behavior doesn't serve anyone, because I'm just blindly repeating the destiny of a family member that had been excluded from the family system. And the family system is always interested in restoring that, in having that excluded member included. So it often happens that this role falls onto the most vulnerable family member, and that's often the children. So the children take on burdens that don't really belong to them. And through this carrying a burden that doesn't belong to me, I am disrupting the natural law. I'm putting myself in a higher position than my ancestors, and I'm supposed to be on a different level naturally. I need to give back that ancestral burden to take my rightful spot as the child in relationship to those ancestors. And that is really big, impactful work to resolve those entanglements.
Right. It is deep work. And I think acknowledging that these entanglements exist is the beginning, right? Being able to recognize that, oh, this thought pattern or this wounding or this whatever karma doesn't actually belong with me. It didn't start with me. I'm carrying it. That sucks to realize, but understanding that now because you're the one dealing with it, you actually have the power to dismantle it and make sure it does not get passed on to other family
Yeah,
members is hugely empowering too.
yeah. And when I do this family constellation work, there's healing phrases that can be spoken. And one that is really impactful is to turn towards the ancestors and say, I take your love and leave the rest with you.
Hmm.
And that kind of frees me up, that liberates me to live my life individually without that dysfunctional bonding that might be present. I just take the love, but leave the rest. And then I'm free to live my life fully, including living my life joyfully. I don't need to repeat any dysfunction like self-neglect or illness or whatnot. I can just choose my own joy.
And that's one of the main pieces of the puzzle in the work you do
Right,
is this,
right.
joie de vivre, right?
Yeah. I was choosing this term joie de vivre, energy healer, and then I noticed that for the American speakers that term isn't that much in the vocabulary as it was for me growing up close to the border of France. So everybody knows, oh yeah, that's the term for joy of life.
Yeah.
But I chose this term because so many people came to me saying, I don't know what's going on, but somehow it feels like that joy button is stopped and I would like to turn it on again. I just don't feel this joy of life. It's seems paused in my life, and how I wish I could turn it on again.
Hmm.
And yeah, this is all about doing this reparenting work and becoming your own grown up, reaching out to that younger version within that is crying out for help
How
because
much of the
they're
work?
stuck somehow in an earlier life passage.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm curious, in your experience, how much of the work is energetic work where we're untangling from ancestors that maybe we haven't even met, and we're still having to work through some of those generational things, versus how much of it is untangling things that physically happened to us with our like immediate family or whatever, that's maybe more tactile stuff that we would remember versus the energetic stuff that we might feel but not really know about? Or is it more one direction or the other? How does that play into your work?
It's definitely energetic work, big time. And another thing that many people I work with say is they express their feelings somehow stuck in their now self, in their grown up life. And in that context, I like to explain how um, many of us are familiar with this definition of emotion as energy in motion. And then I add to that, well, stuckness is when emotions are not in motion. And in that dysfunctional state that we have talked about so much now, there is emotions that are stuck somehow in your physicality because they haven't been felt fully and completely at some point in life because that was too overwhelming. And now I can get back to those unfelt emotions and have this commitment to feel them fully and completely. Sometimes it's even entire life passages that have not been completed. And once I address those, then I can feel this forward momentum again, and my life doesn't feel stuck anymore.
Hmm. That's not something that in our modern world we think about too often is these life passages. I think that they're a very important piece, very important milestones that used to be recognized and celebrated, and we are too busy. We just move right by and don't acknowledge, and therefore we miss a big opportunity to help our souls grow and heal. And we often have to go back, right, with someone like you and
Yeah.
and do the work to do what could or should have been done at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. This is where it's really tragic because how often do we hear somebody complaining, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on, but I seem to be attracting the same miserable situations to my life and I'm so done with it. Well, that's exactly where my tagline got created, complete so as to not repeat.
Hmm.
Because if there isn't this state of completion, we are trapped in those repetitive, miserable situations that come into our field again and again, so that we have that opportunity to make the better choice. But when we are when we are still in this lower frequency, it seems so impossible to get out of there.
It really does. And we often, if we're not aware, will wonder like, why do I see these patterns? Why do I experience the same thing over and over, right? And it's exactly as you said, we need to complete or heal or learn or else the universe is going to keep giving us another opportunity if we
Right.
missed the lesson in the first place.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so this completion work is so vital.
Yeah. What does it look like for someone who comes to do this deep work with you? Like, how do you get started? I'm just imagining like we all need this, but if someone knows that they need it but has no idea even where to start, do you start at the beginning with them and help them understand what pieces are required, or do most people come to you having a clear understanding of what they need to work on?
I have found from my experience that a big element is that people typically don't feel their emotions in their physicality. They might be familiar cognitively what an emotion means, but it's so difficult for many people to make this shift from up here to down into that hard womb space where I'm not understanding just cognitively, but also somatically, and this body based understanding, this felt sense of emotions. That is what is generating huge breakthroughs and transformation in the people that I work with. It's really experiencing the whole continuum of emotions in this somatic body based sense. And again, there is this emphasis of not excluding anything, but including all. It's by default often the way that I say, okay, this is what I want to feel. That's a good emotion, but this bad emotion, I'm gonna stay away from that. But it's really the goal to come to this place of integrity where I don't judge and exclude certain emotions, but I'm willing to embrace them all and to be in this place of non-judgment and just perceiving whatever is with compassion and in this place of full acceptance of everything.
Yeah. If you're listening to this right now and just feeling the sense of bliss that I am, just like envisioning this being part of my world, we're going to make sure that Katja's website is on the show notes because you need to head over there as the first
Mm.
place to get started with continuing to learn from her and be in her world because it is just so, I think healing just to be in your energy, just to hear
Mm.
your voice, just to consume the content that you're creating, and as a first step. And then, of course, when people are ready to work with you, that's also how they find you on your website. Is there anything that feels like it wants to be said, or anything that we haven't touched on that feels important to share before we wrap today's episode?
Mm. I feel the best thing that I can leave listeners with is to reiterate what I've just said a couple moments before, that I am moving from this self criticism, this self judgment, to a place where I can be in compassionate forgiveness and to really tell that little girl within, I accept you exactly as you are.
Yes, that is, I think, something that we all need to work on getting closer to. And it is something that you can absolutely achieve. And if you need some support with that, Katja is your girl. You
Mm.
want to reach out to her. Thank you so much for being with us again today. It's always an honor to have you on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And to everybody listening, until next week, keep on growing like a mother.
Mm.